Keyonte George makes his first start. Was it too soon for the youngsters' well-being? Turnovers and defense still ail the Jazz. It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. Bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and this is Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. We'll talk about Keyonte George making his first start as a member of the Utah Jazz in last night's ball game against the Indiana Pacers. We'll talk about the good Jordan Clarkson flaming on finally and getting his vibe on and why that was allowed to happen. And then we'll look at some of the turnovers and the defensive issues that the Jazz are having with a late game watch of Boston, Philly, as well as Brooklyn Clippers last night, and then Boston, Minnesota for the day before. Some interesting things going on with the Celtics. As I mentioned, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and this is Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. A few quick notes for you. Thank you very much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen. And thank you very much to the everydayers. We are free and available on all podcasting apps, as well as YouTube. And our YouTube question of the day, which is also available, I believe, on Spotify's Q&A for you, is what did you think of Keyonte George's first start? Is your YouTube question of the day. A few things. Apologize for yesterday. I just mislabeled something, and then when I uploaded it in a rush, yesterday was one of those days. Yesterday was a day where I ordered my salmon salad at 1:30, brought it to my room, and ate it at 5:45 in the arena. That was yesterday. So I never checked X to see the nice people who told me that I uploaded the wrong episode. So I've actually re-uploaded the old episode. It's actually probably a pretty interesting listen because things changed in that time period with Keyonte getting the start. And you could tell that my feeling was something was coming, like just that opening stretch of the second quarter the other night was significant enough that it was time. With 5 turnovers in the opening 6 possessions. The other one today, my voice might sound a little different. I'm in a hotel, and I'm on our hotel seems a little smaller than usual. We're in Memphis, and the players are off, and some of the players are on my floor, which is not usual, but I had a less than great experience where the first hotel room I got into, someone had backed up the toilet and I hadn't cleaned it. So it didn't smell so good. Yeah, it was gross. And so I am in a different floor than I usually am. So I'm trying, if any of the guys are sleeping around me, I waited till 9 to do the show, but I don't want to wake them up. So if I'm a little quieter than usual today, that's why. So Keyonte got the first start last night. And let's start with the first part of it, which is like, how did he do? And I thought he was fine. I do think he's thinking a lot as a point guard. I think the fact that he was not a point guard, and really, I don't know that we entirely drafted him thinking he was going to be a point guard. He was an offensive explosion waiting to happen when he was the number 4 recruit in the country out of Texas, and when he went 33-4 on his junior year team to win state championship. I mean, he was really a scorer. He was not a point guard until halfway through his senior year when the starting point guard in high school got hurt, and he was not a point guard at Baylor. So I do think we're seeing him think an awful lot. I think he can do it. I think he does it naturally. He looks comfortable out there. And so I think, all indicators are that's a good sign that he can do it. The second thing is I thought he may have had a goal of trying to make sure that he finished the game with his teammates still liking him in the simplest terms. I mean, this goes a little bit to what Will's really kind of given us an incredible insight into this process. Like one of the things Will talked a lot about was the 19-year-old having to have a voice. I think Keyonte's instinct is to score and shoot every time he touches the ball. That's how he's been raised. That's what he's done his entire career. That's what he did. I got the vibe watching Baylor that I didn't think that team got along very well. And so he might have dealt with some of this at Baylor. I don't know if that's true. Just watching them, they didn't seem very connected. And so I thought Keyonte played the game last night with a little bit of the intention of like, hey, I'm not taking 18 shots. I'm going to make sure that my teammates finish the night and don't think I suddenly tried to become the man. I think we'll see the 18 shots come. I think that's his natural instinct, and as he gets more and more comfortable, we'll see it. This is earlier than I think anyone anticipated, and maybe earlier than, frankly, if we were just being isolated solely on Keyonte. That's good for Keyonte. It's probably getting a little bit close to like the over-dipped Oreo cookie theory, but he does seem to have just kind of a gumption and an understanding and a flow and a natural aspect of things. But it actually started even before the year started when we started talking about, like, we don't have any off the bounce 3-point shooters other than Jordan Clarkson. Like, that's something Keyonte can do. We don't have any guys that run the pick and roll. That's something Keyonte has shown ability to do. He showed the ability to do all of the things that were lacking in our offensive game plan. He throws the pass early. He wasn't driving always with the intention of scoring and then passing second. He doesn't seem to turn it over quite at the same rate as some of our other guys have been doing it so far. So it became kind of abundantly clear it was going to happen. And then I think it would have been nicer if it had happened in a manner by which, like, it was kind of clear when you look at the roster and the way things were happening that door was going to open for him. And it would have been, I guess, ideal if it could have delayed a little bit, so he just was more comfortable and had his footing and had faced more guys and had a little bit more experience and, had seen a Tyrese Halliburton before. It's a bad example because he's an Eastern Conference player, but those kind of things. But that's not the way it worked out. I think the play as of late left the door like blown wide open, but maybe unfortunately out of guys, nobody in training step forward. That's kind of one of the things that was clear, that no one out of camp like burst themselves forward on the team, owning some of these positions. And in fact of the matter is that in some ways we've regressed, or not maybe regressed, but found out that the task that was being asked of some of the others was just too much, and Keyonte did look like the one who was most natural doing it. And at that point you really are making a team decision, the well-being of the team. And I do think in some extent, if you were making solely a Keyonte decision, you might have waited still a little bit. There's some risk here, that he gets exhausted, overwhelmed, has some tough nights coming up. And I think we have to be really understanding when we're evaluating it on the fact that he still could have, I think it's a little earlier than you want. And I think you can see he's learning a position while doing it. And that's awfully hard on the NBA level. There were some really positive impacts to it. Partially Walker being out and the floor opening up meant that Jordan got a lot more room to work. We finally saw Jordan be Jordan. I think playing off the ball, I think not having the burden of having the ball in his hands and having to play. And I think the maybe feeling that the ball might come back around a second time, which there certainly hasn't been a feeling this year that once the ball, if you give up the ball, you're going to see it again. So I thought Jordan played a much more comfortable game. He still had 6 turnovers. 2 of them were late, so it's a little skewed in that those 2 turnovers happened in the final 2 minutes of the game. We still had 21 turnovers, which is really a big problem. We'll talk about it coming up. But it was pretty great to see Jordan flame on. And more importantly, he played in the flow. He played comfortably, and that's what we got to have. We can't have Jordan having a 3-night stretch like he had in that game. And so there were just a lot of things about offensively where the Jazz offense looked a lot better. I mean, through 3 quarters, the Jazz offense was a 124. Now, Indiana's 26 in the league defensively, and so this was a really good soft landing. And we'll see. We don't play a really good defensive team for a little while, so it should be, a nice sequence here. Portland's terrible defensively. Memphis is short guys, and it's not been as good defensively. So hopefully that'll give, some more opportunity. But I think that was important to get Jordan going. And I do think the lineup, like not having Walker and John Collins in together, which we talked about on yesterday's show, if you got a chance to watch it on YouTube, but you didn't get a chance to listen to it, my apologies. We were minus 20 together with those 2 together on the floor, and the spacing was just tough. And I don't think the guys had totally figured out how to space it. The other thing is for John Collins, playing the 5 is his natural position. I talked about yesterday that I actually wanted to see him maybe roll into a backup 5. He's a really good roller. We saw it a bunch of times last night. The pick and roll has just not been a part of our offense this year, and I think it returns now. With John Collins playing the 5, with Walker out for 2 weeks with the elbow injury, and with Keyonte at the point guard, I think we will see the pick and roll coming. I think we'll see the pick and roll with Lowry. I think we'll see the pick and roll with John Collins, and I think that's necessary for this team. It's still hard to space because we don't have a lot of shooters, but that also allows Jordan to play off ball some, maybe Collin to do some of that, though he did not have a great night last night. His head was still down when driving and got himself in some trouble. Maybe tailing off the ball as the backup point guard will get some better matchups. We saw him bogart a few guys with his strength and power last night we didn't see. So things felt a lot better last night, and it was interesting to see Keyonte. I thought overall, so my answer to the question today, what my thought of Keyonte's first start is I thought he played it cautiously and thoughtfully, and we haven't seen him let loose yet in the process. The turnovers and the defense are still major problems, and we will continue and discuss that. We're just getting started here on Locked On Jazz. We'll hit that as we continue. Our friends over at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball's host Josh Lloyd, the #1 fantasy basketball show in all of the world, to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. So whether you're prepping for a daily draft, scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you with players that you're guaranteed to fit your roster. So let's see who's Josh's pick for this week's eBay Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. All right, Josh has got 5 guys out there that are super interesting. Brandon Miller, the second pick of the draft, should be starting the rest of the week with Terry Rozier recovering from his groin injury. And he has shown, when I've watched Charlotte, though they are not playing well, he has shown some real skills. They lost to Washington last night. So he really, and he's got a quick shot release, done some things really impressively there. Also, Memphis Bismack Biyombo is now starting with Xavier Tillman dealing with knee soreness, and Biyombo could be getting starts, bringing boards and blocks to your fantasy team, but that'd be against the Jazz. You might not do that. And keep an eye on the rookie Jordan Hawkins. He should keep a starting role with the Pelicans as they deal with a myriad of injuries. CJ McCollum is out, and he has been hitting some big numbers. The rookie numbers usually fluctuate, so be a little careful on that one. Those are your eBay Motors guarantees of fantasy picks of the week. Josh Lloyd helping you each and every week. And if you are looking for something for your automobile with over 122 million parts for your #1 ride or die, you can make it with eBay Motors. Brake kits, LED lights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever it might be, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guarantee Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride for the first time, every time, or money back. Plus, at these prices, you'll burn rubber, not cash. eBay Motors. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items apply. Exclusions apply. Eligible items only. Make sure you take advantage of eBay Motors with their exclusive eBay Motors Fit and the eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Pick of the Week with Josh Lloyd. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. Super appreciate you everydayers that are out there. All right, so the Jazz fall. They go to 2-6, 2-7. I had called this 6-game stretch kind of the bellwether of the season where we got right or didn't, and right now we are pacing toward 18 wins. So we're not getting right. And so it'll be interesting to see how this next 2 with the in-season tournament. This is exactly why we have an in-season tournament, because I'm now fired up for the Grizzly game tomorrow and the Blazer game. See if we can grab both of them. The Grizzlies already screwed theirs up by losing to Portland. So maybe we'll see the Grizzlies maybe less into the in-season tournament than the Jazz would be, and take advantage of that. The Jazz can get the win, then get the win on Tuesday against Portland. We have a huge one on Friday, trying to see if we can beat Phoenix, we'd probably get into the 8 or at least get close to it. So kind of awesome. So excited for the in-season tournament. So few things are still big issues to the Jazz. One is half-court defense. Now, without Walker for 2 weeks, this is going to be more significant. We literally have no rim defense anymore. Kelly Olynyk, John Collins are not rim defenders. Walker is. Lowry's not bad. And last night, Indiana shot 44 of their 101 shots at the rim. The league averages 33% of your shots at the rim, and Indiana took 44% of their shots at the rim. And that is a crazy number. You cannot survive that. And then, frankly, the other issue is if someone's taking 44 shots at the rim and you have Walker Kessler, Rudy Gobert, well, that might be somewhat okay. But the problem is we don't have Walker Kessler or Rudy Gobert at the rim. And so therefore, because Walker Kessler is out, and so therefore they're not only getting to the rim, but they're finishing at a really high rate. And it's going to be, we are really, Ron Boone's talked about this a few times. We are really, really going to have to shrink the floor, and shrinking the floor is collectively covering the paint in a manner that makes it so the teams just can't drive to the basket at the rate they're doing. Last night, Indiana's half-court offense, was better than their transition offense. And this is a transition team, but they throttled us in the paint. It's actually, the final number is 45. They shot 30 of 45, 70% at the rim. if you go by periods, it's interesting. You can see them kind of figure it out as the game went on. In the first quarter, they pounded. They took 10 shots at the rim, and then in the second quarter, they took 10 shots at the rim, and in the third quarter, they took 9 shots at the rim, and in the fourth quarter, they took 16 shots at the rim. They went 10 of 16 at the rim in the fourth quarter of the game, and ended up, by the time the night was over, they took 45 shots at the rim. Craziness. But I'm concerned on this. I don't entirely know what we're going to be able to do. We're going to have to probably start to allowing a tremendous amount of threes. If you're going to protect the rim, which is the first place you have to protect, with John Collins and Kelly Olynyk as your centers, you're going to have to do it with massive defensive shifts, and the impact of that is you're going to allow a lot of threes. Last night, we allowed 40 threes to Indiana and 45 rim shots. They only took 15 mid-range shots. They hit the ultimate shot distribution last night, almost perfectly, of 40-40-20, but they were actually better than that. They were 48% of their shots at the rim. They were 38% of their shots as threes, and they were 14% mid-range shots. Like 40-40-20 is like insane. Would be 40% rim shots, 40% threes. They did 48% rim, 14% mid-range, and 38% threes. That is actually better. Their half-court offense last night was a 108.0, plus they got 31% of their offensive rebounds. I mean, just it's awfully tough. And this is going to be really a big struggle for us defensively to try to figure out how we're going to do this without Walker. There was a struggle, frankly, before Walker got injured. But that's it. The easy one is to talk about is that our turnovers are causing us massive problems in transition. The massive problem in transition is the fact that Indiana, who does run a lot, was in transition 21% of the time. The fact is that they actually lost a point and a half in transition because they weren't good in it last night. I mean, that game could have gotten really, really ugly had they executed in transition better. Their offense was a 105.0 in the transition and a 108.0 in the half court. So they were better in the half court. The turnovers, frankly, are kind of I don't know what word to use. Like, it's one thing, for me as the 5'9" play-by-play announcer to say they're absurd. Seems like a kind of nasty shot. But a lot of them are just passing point A to point B and dribbling, getting from point A to point B. These are not what we should have as turnovers. You want to see, I've always said, I'm not bothered by turnovers, but when I've said that, it's always been that the turnover is based on the fact that you're making the same play another 2 or 3 other times. It's leading to layups and leading to plays. The turnovers we're having are not turnovers that would lead to plays. Or lead to buckets. We're not having plays that if that pass was completed, we'd have a basket, right? So if it's the entry pass to start the offense into the post, or the pass down to the wing or to the elbow, or the pass down to the wing or something like that, and it gets taken away for a live ball fast break turnover the other way, that wasn't leading to a basket. If a guy's driving the baseline and wants to wrap it around to the corner in a really, really difficult circumstance and is able to make that pass, and it leads to an open 3, and then the next time it leads to a drive and a kick that leads to a basket, and then the third time it bounces on the baseline, or that'd be fine. But that's not the turnovers we're having right now. These turnovers we're having are not turnovers that lead to other baskets, that lead to other plays. And so that's tough. And they're just all over the place, right? Jordan had 6, Talon had 4, Ochai had 3, John had 2, Kelly had 2. To Keyonte's credit, he had 9 assists and 1 turnover last night. That's probably super important for the Jazz, and maybe the most positive aspect of the night. So that's, we've got to figure that out. It may be the bugaboo that's going to restrict some of these guys' development, or they have to figure it out to develop. This is not coaching. This is not systematic on these turnovers. And so guys are going to have to just be more secure with the ball or put them in places where their skills are exposed for not being able to handle it. Is probably the best way to say it. The rim defense is going to be a massive schematic changes without Walker for 2 weeks, and probably actually long-term good. And then I think, you're going to we're going to give up 40, 45 threes a night. I think that's what you have to do. You can't do what we did last night, which is give up both. You can't have someone having 85% of their shots being smart shots. Simone Fontecchio was a big, huge positive in last night's game. So give him a great deal of credit. He looked really good. The word has been this entire time that he had probably the kind of the camp that overshot people the most. I think you're going to see him regularly getting time now. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if Simone kind of works himself into the rotation by the time Walker comes back. Like indirectly, he's getting time right now because they've kind of played it so that, he's getting Walker's minutes, not Walker's minutes, but Walker's rotation slot. Simone is, if we're playing 10 men and he's out, Simone was the new one in. I think Simone is going to play himself into the rotation. And then we'll see who drops out when Walker comes back in a few weeks. But he was really good last night. He's shooting it well. He plays hard. He plays with super energy, tries to do the right things defensively. He's not physically imposing, but if you're trying to do the right things, particularly, I think we're going to have to become very schematic defensively. I think that those are really, really, really big positives. All right. 3 late game watches coming your direction. Boston, Minnesota from 2 nights ago, Boston, Philly last night, and Brooklyn, New York, LA Clippers are late game watches that we'll touch on here in just a second. Today's show is brought to you in part by Jase Medical. That's Jase Medical. So you need to be in control of those kind of key moments and those difficult moments and those moments when, that uncertainty hits. And that is what Jase Medical is here for you. You go online and Jase Medical, you can receive a 12-month supply of your daily medication. Use the promo code LOCKEDON at checkout and you get a discount. One Jase customer said, I am very thankful for the service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills and have to have it. I ordered most of my pills meds with a year's supply. I also ordered an antibiotic kit, and I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies, and I highly recommend this for everyone. If you or someone you love needs the peace of mind having a year's supply of any daily med, go to jasemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. And by the way, you can also get 1 year supply of ED medications. You realize what that means. Bringing on extended travel, being on the next natural disaster supply chain issue there could be a real bummer. So you are covered, my friend. You don't have to worry about whether or not you can refill your generics for Cialis, Viagra, or any of the others. And this is possible because of our friends over at Jase Medical. Jase also provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. All it takes to get a Jase case is fill out a simple online form, jump on with a quick call with one of the board-certified physicians, and you're rolling. Doctor created and doctor recommended. Don't get caught unprepared. It's Jase Medical with the promo code LOCKED ON. You get a $20 discount that's JASE medical.com, jasemedical.com. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. Super appreciate you. All right. I watched 3 late games last night. We watched the Boston-Philly game where Philly actually was totally in control of this game and then almost threw it away late, which was a little surprising. Boston's interesting. Earlier this year, I watched Boston, and they had Derek White at the top with Kristaps Porzingis and Jason Tatum in a horn set, and Jaylen Brown and Drew Holiday in the corners, and it was unstoppable. And my comment was like, okay, this is totally unstoppable, but I wonder how Drew Holiday and Jaylen Brown are going to like this. And Jaylen Brown last night was having a really, really tough night, finally busted out with 2 threes late. They didn't run any of that same stuff. And I don't entirely know why. They did have Al Horford on the floor a lot of that Minnesota close game, and Anthony Edwards definitely went at, and he was monster, went at Al Horford. But Boston's lost both these 2 games And it was super interesting to kind of see them not run the same stuff that they ran earlier this year. They relied on Kristaps a little bit as a pop big. The other one is that in both these two games, Rudy Gobert and Joel Embiid were in the middle, and it just took away kind of the spread floor aspect of Boston pushing it and getting into the lane and really getting to the basket was kind of completely denied by having both Gobert and Embiid. And you didn't see Boston look anywhere nearly as aggressively to the basket, or they're really, when I watched them earlier this year, if it wasn't Drew Holiday getting to the basket, if it wasn't Derek White getting the basket, it was Tatum getting the basket, and they just spread the floor and they were just coming at you kind of relentlessly. It didn't feel that way at all. They took 28 shots at the rim in this game. They went 18 of 28. They spread them out fairly evenly throughout the night. It wasn't like they just went on a drought at some point. So I'm not, I think that's worth keeping an eye on. Tyrese Maxey was really good in this game. Joel Embiid dominated most of the game from the sounds, Brian Scalabrine on the call. But the fourth quarter, Tyrese Maxey was just terrific. He went 5 of 10, I think, for 11 points in the fourth quarter, and was really running everything through Maxey. And he had to throw up a few prayers. They got super stagnant late and just about cost themselves the game, which was weird. Embiid hit one really massive turnaround. The only thing was Embiid only got 3 shots late, but they're playing in a nice system. They've got DeAnthony Melton, who's a good defender. Tyrese Maxey's into you. They're using Covington and Batum, who are long off the bench. They've got Embiid. Tobias Harris is a good secondary offense or third offensive player. Kelly Oubre didn't play as much as usual, but Philly's now got the best record in the Eastern Conference and looked really, really good doing it. The Clippers are fascinating. Like, I don't think I could stop watching them. I think I've got to watch them every time they play. They threw up all over themselves in New York in the fourth quarter. And then last night, they kind of threw up on themselves again in the fourth quarter. They're now, and the fourth quarter is interesting because, like, James Harden checks back in the game in the fourth quarter last night. At one point, they were playing Westbrook, Harden, Kawhi, Paul George, and Zubac. That's their starting 5. That's their group. They threw PJ Tucker in there for a little bit. So a few things were just really interesting about the Clippers last night. So one is exactly kind of what I wondered when they made the trade is you suddenly are going at Harden on every possession. Like, Jacques Vaughn was running his stuff to Mikal Bridges and whoever. Spencer Dinwiddie had a big shot late, and Sharp made some really nice plays. I mean, Brooklyn played well. Brooklyn made a ton of shots last night. But they're searching out Harden. There was no one you used to be able to search out on that roster. When they had Russell Westbrook and Robert Covington and Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and Nicholas Batum on the floor, there was no one you could search out. Now you're trying to create a James Harden Zubac pick and roll defense, and I think it's a problem for the Clippers. The other problem for the Clippers is you're not getting anything out of Harden. So Harden in 10 minutes of the fourth quarter took 2 shots. He came back into the game last night with about 6-7 minutes left in the game, and maybe he checked out. I'll have to look at it. He probably was like 4 minutes left in the game. Yeah, he comes back in for Powell with 4:43 left in the game. He doesn't touch the ball. He did not touch the ball until 39 seconds left in the. So he literally went 4 minutes without touching the basketball. They're not a ball movement team. They're not swinging it. Even they ran a handoff where, like, Harden gave it to Paul George, and then Westbrook gave it to Harden, I think. And, like, Westbrook runs through, and, like, no one follows Westbrook. Like, no one guards him at all in any way, shape, or form. But they're also running it because they're running it at Harden's speed at, like, 1/3 pace. So it's really interesting. Westbrook has to have the ball in his hands, or else he has zero gravity, and they're not guarding him at all. And then Paul George and Kawhi Leonard have to go one-on-one, and they have no room, and Paul George went 1 for 5. It's going to be super interesting to start looking at the numbers of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard when they're on the floor with both James Harden and Russell Westbrook. And I don't think I see this working. Like, Westbrook still had the ball the majority of that quarter, and his numbers look fine, but his impact was not. And I think there's going to be a massive problem for the Clippers. And then finally, on the other end of things, just a lot of plays made, a lot of hustle plays. Brooklyn just out hustled them in a ton of different ways in that game. So that's going to be fascinating to watch, and we will certainly keep an eye on it. All right, that's your late game watch. I'll be watching a bunch more today, getting ready for the Jazz and the Grizzlies. We're going to do an Ask LOJ tomorrow, so look for my requests on X for your Ask LOJ questions tomorrow on the program. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Jazz and being a part of the Locked On Jazz family, and for you everydayers, you're the best.